During his tenure as Mayor of London, Boris Johnson turned the city centre into an environmental zone. His successor is now expanding that zone, but Johnson's Conservatives are protesting. So, what's behind all this? Today, when I'm filming this, the environmental zone in London is to be extended to the entire city area. This also applies to tourists who want to drive to the British capital with their own car or motorcycle. If you want to drive into the ultra-low emission zone, the ULEZ, it's necessary to register the vehicle online beforehand, according to the Transport for London Transport Authority. And it's good to know that the M25 ring road is unaffected by the restrictions. So if you drive past London, for example on the way to Scotland, you don't have to pay attention to anything. However, there is a lot that applies in the environmental zone. All cars and motorcycles not registered in Great Britain must be registered online beforehand, even if they meet the emission standards applicable in the zone. Anyone who does not register the vehicle risks high fines. According to the European Consumer Centre, fines of £180 per day can be imposed, and that is around €210, and that's expensive. And tourists should not speculate on remaining undiscovered. According to the EVZ, the license plates of all vehicles entering the city are automatically photographed and compared with a database. If a motor vehicle is not registered or the due environmental fee has not been paid, the owner will receive a fine notice. A daily fee of £12.50 must be paid for vehicles that do not meet the emission standards applicable in the ULEZ, and this corresponds to about €14.50. In the case of petrol engines, these are all cars that do not meet at least the Euro 4 standard. For diesel vehicles, the fee must be paid for all vehicles that do not meet the Euro 6 standard. For motorcycles, entry into the ULEZ is free for all machines that do meet the Euro 3 standard. To check and register the car, all information can be found on a government website, and just have a look for the ULEZ there. Anyone who is keen to drive into London should carefully study the applicable regulations beforehand. In addition to the London Authority, which also provides the most important information for my German viewers, for example, the ADAC also offers comprehensive information on its website, so you can get information here in Germany. And it's also interesting, in addition to the extended environmental zone, there is also a city toll zone, a congestion charge zone in the inner city area of London. At most times, drivers have to pay a prepaid fee there, for example, online. Motorcycles are excluded from this one, at least. If the regulations are too opaque for you and you want to avoid all this, it's better to leave your vehicle just outside and take public transport into London. But the rules aren't just tiring for tourists, they also are a big campaign issue for Rishi Sunak. While Rishi Sunak has so far preferred to use the helicopter for his appointments, the British Prime Minister is now revealing an unexpected inclination to the car. "I stand by the driver's side," emphasized the head of government, and announced that he would put a range of restrictive measures to the test. Free travel for free citizens instead of the success of climate goals. That's at least the criticism of environmentalists that say he puts the wrong priorities. The Conservatives just want to score cheaply, they say. In a crucial election year in which polls have left the Tories trailing behind opposition Labour Party, observers are questioning whether the interests of the nation or political success are more important here for the Tories. But now the Prime Minister hopes that the environmental zone will stop the trend. The ultra-low emission zone in London, in which only vehicles with low pollutant emissions are allowed to drive, was, as I said, once brought to life by the Conservative Mayor Boris Johnson for central London. And the aim was to get better air for the residents of the British capital and the numerous tourists. And Johnson's successor, Sadiq Khan, now, today when I'm filming, is having the zone massively expanded. And now it applies throughout the whole city. But many motorists vehemently reject the project, and this is where Sunak Tories come into play. When a successor to the resigning Boris Johnson was recently elected in the Uxbridge and South Ruislip, I never can pronounce that constituency, the Tory candidate won, quite contrary to the trend. He campaigned exclusively against the expansion of the ULEZ, and his success now serves as a role model for Sunak. Because the decisive factor is that Mayor Khan belongs to the Labour Party and has long been a target of the government. There will also be elections in London in 2024, and so far the Conservatives in the capital have mainly attracted attention with a chaotic selection of candidates. Sunak is now demonstratively on the side of the 30 million motorists in Great Britain. The vast majority of people in the country use their cars to get around and are dependent on their cars, he said after the Uxbridge election. The fact that rural areas like Sunak's constituency cannot be compared with the cosmopolitan city of London, that the cities of Birmingham and Bath also have an environmental zone, who cares? In order to drive for free in the low emission zone, the cars must meet certain emission standards, as I said. And at least what I said earlier with the Euro 4 standard for petrol engines and the Euro 6 standards for diesel is at least what the London Authority published before they started the whole thing. I mentioned it for tourists earlier, but you also have to pay a fine if you are not a tourist, of course. And everyone in London has to pay the £180 or £90 if they pay within 2 weeks. City Hall signaled that warnings would be issued rather than penalties in the beginning. And as I said, tourists also need to be careful, but I would never drive there with my car. Paul Scully, the Secretary of State for the City of London, criticized Mayor Khan for shooting sparrows with cannons. Businesses, charities and people on low incomes would be disadvantaged now. And according to calculations by the car service provider RAC, 690,000 vehicles in London are affected, not counting commuters or visitors from outside the city limits. The city provides financial support for conversions or new purchases. For many people, however, that will hardly be enough. And some react radically. In recent months, almost 300 of the 2,750 newly installed cameras have been damaged or stolen, as the police said. Neighbouring Conservative-run communities don't want to put up signs for ULEZ on their own land. On the other hand, classic car sellers benefit from this because vehicles built before 1983 are exempt from the rules. And car experts have identified a real run here. Financially, the environmental zone is definitely worth it. They grossed 320 million between October 21 and April 23. Conservatives say that the mayor wants to balance his budget with the expansion. Khan rejects this, and he has repeatedly ruled out a short-term reversal. Rather, Khan always emphasizes that 90% of the vehicles have no problems at all. And finally, millions of Londoners could breathe more clear air. But his party prefers not to comment on the subject at all. But Sunak will use this more and more in the election campaign. After all, they need new topics for the next election in 24. The old manifesto with which Boris Johnson won his victory cannot be adopted in the same way again. The 2019 Conservative Party manifesto was entitled Get Brexit Done, Unleash Britain's Potential. It was a 59-page document that set out the party's policies on a wide range of issues, including Brexit, the economy, public services and social care. The manifesto's main focus was on Brexit, though. The Conservatives promised to get Brexit done by negotiating a withdrawal agreement with the European Union and passing it through Parliament by the end of January 2020. They also promised to hold a referendum on the final Brexit deal if necessary. On the economy, the Conservatives promised to level up the country by investing in infrastructure, skills and businesses in the North and Midlands. And they also promised to cut taxes for businesses and individuals and to reduce regulation. On public services, the Conservatives promised to build a stronger NHS by increasing funding and investing in new technologies. They also promised to recruit 50,000 more police officers and to build 40 new hospitals. On social care, the Conservatives promised to fix the crisis in social care by introducing a new funding system that would be shared between the state and individuals. They also promised to increase the number of care home places. The manifesto also included commitments on other issues such as education, housing, and the environment. The Conservatives won the 2019 general election with a large majority, and many of the policies in the manifesto have not been implemented since then. And the manifesto has also been criticized for being vague on some issues and for not being ambitious enough on others. But I want to go into a few of them again, because it's important. They wanted to negotiate a withdrawal agreement with the European Union and pass it through Parliament by the end of January 2020. That is the thing they did. And to hold a referendum on the final Brexit deal if necessary. They obviously didn't feel it necessary. And about the level up of the country by investing in infrastructure, skills and businesses in the North and Midlands, we're still waiting for that one. And cut taxes for businesses and individuals, yeah, Liz Truss tried that one and we know what happened. But building a stronger NHS is the biggest failure of what they were promising. They recruited more police officers and built some new hospitals, but it still is a big problem with the NHS. We must not forget that. And the other points, they did some small working on it, but most of the manifesto, except Brexit, has not happened. And Brexit did not good to the country. So this promise cannot be used again. The details of those policies were not as well defined as the policies on Brexit, levelling up in public services, what else they promised. And so you didn't even know what it was. And I said it was criticized for being vague on a lot of stuff, and the document was just there to win an election. That's why the Brexit topic was so important in the manifesto. But the main topics of the Tories for the 2024 election are likely to be the economy, for example. The Conservatives will likely focus on the UK's economic recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic, and they will also need to address the rising cost of living, which is a major concern for voters. And there will definitely be a Brexit topic again, because the Conservatives will need to defend their record on Brexit, which has been a divisive issue. They will also need to address the concerns of voters who feel that Brexit has not delivered on its promises. However, they will do it. And the Conservatives will need to show that they are investing in public services such as the NHS and the police. And they will also need to address the staffing shortages that are affecting these services. And the Conservatives will need to show that they are making progress on their promise to level up, because we haven't seen much investing in infrastructure and businesses in the North and the Midlands. And the Conservatives are likely to focus on immigration control very much, which is a popular issue with some voters. However, they will need to be careful not to alienate voters who are concerned about the impact of immigration on public services. And the Conservatives will need to address the crisis in social care, which is a major concern for many voters. They will need to show that they have a plan to make social care more affordable and accessible. The vague stuff from last time won't work again. And these are just some of the main topics that the Tories are likely to focus on in the 2024 general election. The specific issues that they emphasize will depend on the political climate at the time and the concerns of voters. And climate change will definitely not play a big role anymore, as they showed after the Uxbridge election and Euless. And so they are very populist now. And so they will just have a look, what is a popular topic, and we will just jump on it. But except getting a withdrawal agreement, not the withdrawal agreement, also a deal with the EU, what they promised, and get Brexit done. Well, Brexit isn't done still. But nevertheless, they got their agreement. But that was all that really happened. And so I'm quite curious to see not only the Tory manifesto, which I put in a topic in the end of the video because we needed to talk about Sunak's current strategy because of ULIS. But I'm also interested what will happen with the Labour manifesto here, because it needs to be very different from that from last time. But what the people in the UK need is a Labour manifesto that differs from the Tory manifesto. You need something that makes a difference between those two parties. Otherwise, it doesn't matter who wins the election. But we will talk about this topic definitely more in the future. And if you want to know something else about Brexit or UK politics, the next video is right here in the end screen. I'll see you there. I'll be back.